I'm Wendy McGarvey. I'm the Head of HR at TC Group and Head of HR Client Advisory for London and the South.
Hello, I'm Keir. I'm Head of HR Client Advisory for the Midlands and North.
Today we're going to talk you through the significant employment changes that are proposed by the current government, the impact on your business, your people, your HR practices. With over 60 pledges that are there to strengthen employee rights, we'll guide you through what those changes are.
Let's start with the changes to employee rights. There are a number of day one rights which are being implemented for employees and removal of the statutory qualifying period, things such as unfair dismissal, sick pay and maternity leave. The changes to 0-hour contracts are to basically take away any of the bias towards the employer, so making it fairer for the employee in that stage, so providing regular hours, if regular hours are worked, and more certainty around the work that they're doing. So the removal of the employer and worker distinctions is to basically create one set of rules for everybody in the workplace. So that's on things such as holiday pay, sick pay, maternity and paternity leave. There is a proposed statutory right to bereavement leave which is being introduced. Many businesses will already provide some form of bereavement leave, but what the government is proposing is that there will be a statutory amount that will be provided to everybody, and that will be a right for all employees. There was a proposed right to switch off which was introduced by the Labour government. That's been paused for now. It's still part of the longer term vision, but it's not going to be introduced anytime soon.
There are also key legislation changes that you will need to comply with. Statutory sick pay, which is currently £116.75 per week, is to be paid from day one of absence, and there will also be the removal of the lower earnings limit, which is currently set at £123 per week on average. Currently, employees do not receive statutory sick pay until day 4 of their period of absence if they meet the lower earnings limit. However, this will be removed from April and everybody will be entitled to statutory sick pay from day 1 of absence. Flexible working will become the default from day 1 of employment for all employees. Now, currently, employers have the ability to use one of the 8 reasons for refusal, as long as they can meet the criteria for those, but this will be removed with the new legislation. Currently, the tribunal claim period is 3 months, whereas this is going to be increased to 6 months. Now, what this is going to do is put increased pressure on tribunals because they already currently have a huge backlog of claims. From April 2025, the national living wage is due to increase to £12.21 per hour. 18 to 20-year-olds will also increase the national minimum wage from £8.60 to £10 per hour, with the aim to bring it more in line for one single adult rate. Apprentices will also increase from £6.40 per hour to £7.55. Employers' national insurance contribution rates will be increasing from 13.8% to 15% from April 2025. In addition to this, the rate on which they start their national insurance contributions will be reduced from £9,100 to £5,000 per employee. So what this will mean is there is a huge increase to employers on their employer national insurance rates.
So what does this mean for businesses? There are many impacts that these changes will have on businesses. The theme of the changes were to be weighted towards employees. So it's going to mean a bit of a change of ways of working for the business. There's going to need to be changes to contracts of employment. There's going to be needed changes to processes. There'll be needed changes to how employees are managed and how managers are trained to be able to manage those employees. There won't be any further changes to what's already been confirmed for April 2025 and the legislation which will be introduced then. However, there will be some further changes over the next 18 months when more legislation is introduced and confirmed. There are going to need to be changes for new and existing employee contracts. Specifically for new employees, there will need to be changes around the probation period. There'll also need to be changes for things such as maternity leave, paternity leave and sick pay. Policies will need to be updated as well as the contract of employment to make sure that they are in line with each other and that they're in line with the legislation. There will need to be some changes to employee processes as well. That will be things such as the management of the probation period, how 0-hour employees are managed, and how things like maternity and paternity are managed as well. There will be some training requirements for managers. We recommend regularly updating and training managers to ensure that they are in line with legislation. However, this set of legislation changes will mean that managers will need to be better at managing things such as probation and sick pay and their zero-hour employees. So we recommend that they do go through a more thorough training programme.
Training will need to be provided to all managers for the new legislation. However, the first step should be to ensure that they're all fully trained on the current legislation and your current practices. Managers will need to be trained on how to deal with staff performance issues under current legislation and timescales, but also then on the new timescales coming in with probationary periods, etc. You will also need to ensure managers are trained on how to manage staff absence, the reporting process, and then for them to be able to communicate with the staff how they're going to get paid and what they're going to get paid under the new rules. Additional training we can help support you with is on how to manage flexible working, currently under their request rights, but also then moving forward from day one. Our HR teams are able to provide management training for you and your teams on a whole range of HR topics, including how to manage performance and absence issues.
As well as additional training for your managers, now is a good time to also review your workforce. A business would implement a performance improvement plan in a couple of different ways, and it depends on if they've got any written process already included within a policy or handbook, and that would be usually the first place that we would start by asking the question to them. If not, then what we'll do is that we would talk them through a process whereby, again, they go back to the contract and job description and ensure what they are asking the employee to do lines up with that, and then meet with the employee and discuss any areas of poor performance alongside what the expectations of the business are. If businesses have staff where they're unsure on the performance, what I would recommend is first of all going back to their job description and their job title and ensuring that what you are expecting of them is what you've got and communicated to them either at the job offer stage or during any changes to their employment. If a member of staff isn't working out, there are a number of ways that the business can approach the situation to ensure a safe exit of the employee. The key thing really for the business is to ensure that they're being fair and transparent with the employee and communicating if there are any issues. In terms of how they actually go about exiting them, it's very different depending on the situation that they have. So it could be through a performance improvement plan. There could be a number of other ways and avenues that we could explore, and clearly we can talk through that in more detail with the client. There are some changes to the redundancy legislation. This would affect the number of establishments that the business previously could rely upon for the period of consultations. So previously, one establishment would be one location geographically. What the change is now is that across the whole business, all establishments will become one. So the number of employees that are required for a collective consultation within a redundancy situation is 20. So if there are 20 or more employees that are at risk of redundancy, that will mean a collective consultation. If a client wanted to undertake a redundancy process themselves and they were unaware of the legislation changes that have been implemented and introduced, then they could fail to consult correctly with the employees that are being made redundant, and that could then lead to an automatic unfair dismissal. TC Group can help with the employee redundancies through establishing the number of employees that are placed at risk of redundancy across the business and ensuring that the client is in line with current legislation and the consultation periods required.
So, what should you be checking? Do your employees have a written contract of employment? Do you have an employee handbook which details your staff policies? Are your contracts and handbook in line with current legislation and ready for the upcoming changes? Speak to TC Group for assistance with any HR documentation and updating of policies. Remember to provide employees with notice of where changes are being made. Ensure new terms and conditions are drafted and signed by employees.
Many of our clients review their HR efficiency through our HR Health Check. Our HR Health Check is a tool which we believe is great for businesses to use to understand everything from a people perspective. It's a report which we provide to clients that will enable them to have 12 key areas of HR fully evaluated, and we provide a red, amber and green rating to them on whether there is a an urgent need to fix something, something's working okay at the moment but may need looking at in the future, or whether something is really, really going well. What we will look at is everything, starting from the early people strategy and people planning all the way through to employee exit and everything in between. The 12 areas which we will evaluate in a HR health check include your people planning and strategy, the recruitment process, employee engagement, your contracts and policies, the onboarding process, your people management capability, your HR systems, internal communication, your sickness policy, performance reviews, the remuneration and benefits, and your leaver process. So an example of a client that we've supported with a HR health check is a client that we worked with a number of years ago who was looking to sell their business. They came to us because they wanted to check that their HR contracts, policies, and everything from a people perspective was up to date and in line with legislation and in tip-top shape. We provided a report to them which highlighted a number of areas that they needed to work on and improve, and what we did is supported them with the implementation of those improvements over a period of 6 months. That then enabled them to provide the report to any prospective buyers, which made them much more attractive as a selling company.
For support with the upcoming employment changes, your people strategy or your HR documentation, please do get in touch for a free HR consultation.
Thank you for listening.